here is the second video from my second visit to some Milwaukee record stores. Our second Milwaukee record store crawl. Anyway, just wanted to show you some of the other finds. The previous video was I was showing a Roxy music box set that I had found. It was really cool. And if you're interested, if you didn't see that one, I'll put a link to that one below. And anyway, these are the other records that I picked up last time I was in Milwaukee. I can't remember. We hit 4 different stores, and the last store we went to didn't have any vinyl. But I've long since forgotten which ones I got in, with a couple exceptions. So anyway, I just put them all together. I'll show you those. So this is a record by the band Altan, or Altan. I've never really been quite sure how to say that. Horse with a Heart is the name of the album, from 1979. This is a band, they do a lot of sort of traditional jigs and reels, that sort of thing. Both Irish and Scottish. Very traditional band. If you're familiar with the band Solace, with Karen Casey, similar kind of feel to this. Some of the songs they do in Gaelic. This one, Simple Minds, I actually had this album already, and to be honest with you, if you caught the video that I did recently where Weavy Ray sent me a couple records, he also sent me another copy of this record. So at this point now I have 3 copies of this record, but this one is kind of special because get it out. It is on white vinyl. Milky white vinyl. And I suppose if I had to choose a favorite color of vinyl, it would be white. I don't know what it is, I just love that sort of creamy, white, milky look to it. Anyway, so that's kind of cool. White vinyl. I think I only paid like $3 for that too, which to me is a steal. Some XTC 12 inches. Absolutely adore the band XTC. This is a 12-inch for Senses Working Overtime. This is the 12-inch for All You Pretty Girls. 12-inch for Mayor of Simpleton. And the 12-inch for Love on a Farm Boy's Wages. Found these all in the same bin at the same store, so somebody had just given up their collection of XTC 12 inches. Beat Manifesto, Armed Audio Warfare. This is, let me just sort of read a little bit about this. This is Beat Manifesto's debut album, Armed Audio Warfare, was scheduled for release in May of 1988. The masters to that album were damaged in a fire at Meat Beat HQ in Soho. New tracks were written and recorded and then released as the double album Storm the Studio. This is the double album Storm the Studio on Wax Tracks. This is not something I found in Milwaukee recently. I've had this. I love this album. But it always seemed a little odd because there really essentially are 4 tracks on this album as a double album. And there are all kinds of remixes and variations on those same 4 tracks. But now I understand, because this was intended to be their first album, but the masters were destroyed. So anyway, this album, Armed Audio Warfare, is a compilation of previously unreleased and rare tracks that embody the initial furor of Meat Beat's Manifesto. Had Armed Audio Warfare been released as planned, it might have sounded like this. An industrial band, lots of samples being used, at least at this point in their career, lots of samples being used. I first heard tracks from Storm the Studio and just absolutely fell in love with it. I think I picked it up as an experiment just because the name of the band sounded interesting, and just fell in love with it. And it's just cool stuff. So it is neat to have this little link in their history. It's Armed Audio Warfare, which basically was intended to be their first album. This is also on Wax Tracks, and one of the cool things about it, Wax Tracks being a Chicago label, one of the cool things about it is that there's this insert here with Play It Again Sam and Wax Trax albums being displayed. Hi, Gwen. My kitty is here to say hello. Would you like to come up and say hello? Yeah? Here. There's my kitty. Hi there. How you doing? Yeah. How you doing? Say hi to the camera. She's camera shy. Okay. Rolling onward. Very early UB40 live album. This is 1982. So very early in their career, live album. You can see that it's a low budget cover, that sort of thing. It's kind of cool too, because inside of this one is a little flyer for buttons and posters and t-shirts that you can buy. UB40 at that point. I think UB40's debut album was either 1980 or 1981, so being that this is 1982, this is pretty early in their career still. A reggae album that's a kind of a standard that everybody should have, but for some reason I did not have it. Handsworth Revolution from Steel Pulse. Found that one relatively inexpensively, so didn't have it in my collection, in my reggae collection, so picked that one up. This one, very, very excited to find this one, although I'm probably going to be the only person who sees this that is excited by this album. I was raised in Cleveland, Ohio, and there were two influences very early on that got me into reggae, and I don't know if you've seen any of my other videos about this, but I'm a huge reggae fan. There were two influences very early on when I was a teenager that got me into reggae, and one of those was Bob Marley, hearing Bob Marley on the radio, and the other was a local Cleveland band called I-Tal. I used to hear I-Tal music occasionally being played on Cleveland radio stations, and certainly when I got old enough to go downtown to see some shows and things like that, I remember I-Tal being one of the bands that was playing down there. Their own record label there. A lot of the I-Tal being one of the bands that played pretty regularly in downtown Cleveland. They're really good as far as a reggae band goes. They sound very, very authentic. Never in a million years, after having moved to Illinois, never in a million years would I have expected to find their self-titled album. But I especially did not expect to find it in Milwaukee. Nevertheless, 1980. I-Tal, Cleveland, Ohio. Their own record label. Very, very pleased to find that. I think probably other than that Roxy Music box set, this was a prize find. This was the prize find. A couple other reggae records while I'm at it. Jimmy Cliff, self-titled record from Jimmy Cliff on Trojan Records. Sort of famous Trojan record label. A lot of great reggae on Trojan. This Jimmy Cliff album is the one with Time Will Tell, Many Rivers to Cross, that sort of thing. Toots and the Maytals, Funky Kingston, also on Trojan. Really pleased to find that. Switching gears almost entirely now, the League Unlimited Orchestra. This is an album that the Human League put out with orchestrated versions of a lot of their hits at the time. So Hard Times, Love in Action, Don't You Want Me, Things That Dreams Are Made Of. Anyway, songs like that. Just I like Human League a lot. I remember at the time in the 80s, I was into much more guitar-based music, and I did not care for Human League, but I have come to appreciate them. Anyway, this was kind of a neat find. Apparently it's not all that rare or anything like that, but just an album with the orchestral versions, some of their hits. Depeche Mode, 12-inch single for But Not Tonight. another Depeche Mode 12-inch single for It's Called a Heart. Something else I picked up, an album, or what's probably more likely an EP from Robert Fripp called Network. I don't really know much about this, but when I looked at the roster of people who appear on these songs, Phil Collins, Brian Eno, Robert Fripp obviously, Daryl Hall, Tony Levin, Peter Gabriel, Busta Jones, David Byrne. How can you go wrong with that? Well, they got 4 songs on it. But anyway, oops, Robert Fripp, Network. Moving back a little bit further in age, Sweet, Give Us a Wink. This is one of these gadget albums. Give Us a Wink, get it? Gadget kind of thing going on the Mac as well. Anyway, I like Sweet. Kind of a glam pop, glam rock band from the 70s. Fox on the Run and Ballroom Blitz are their more famous songs. This, I believe, is Sweet's first album, when they were just known as The Sweet. A bit of a suggestive cover there. Anyway, this is the album with Little Willie on it, and also Hellraiser. A number of metal bands have covered Hellraiser. Fabulous track. Anyway, so that's Sweet's. And again, I believe it's their debut album. And then finally, this album here, which I only picked up because I've heard Jeff and a number of other people raving about this album. As a matter of fact, I think Jeff Record Band 1958, I think his icon on YouTube is this album. But I've heard a number of people talk about it, a number of people rave about it. I have to admit that with a cover like that, if I would have just seen it and not known anything about it, I might have passed it by. I haven't listened to it yet, but I certainly trust the tastes of those of you who have, and those of you who've raved about it. So I'm looking forward to hearing that. I'm looking forward to giving that a spin. It's a beautiful day, and since it's self-titled, I'm going to assume it's their first album. Anyway, that's it. That's my my score from the second Milwaukee trip that we've taken this year. Well, depends what you want to call a year, because I guess the first Milwaukee trip was still in 2011. Anyway, that's all. If anybody has any comments about any of those records, if anybody knows something more about some of the ones that I didn't know about, feel free to make a comment. I'd love to hear from people. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Well, thanks for watching regardless, whether you leave a comment or not. And I'll catch you around on YouTube.